Hi all, it's a bit of a different one this time because one, I'm out of the Solent, two, I'm in Cartagena, which is, for those who don't know, the north or Caribbean coast of Colombia. I was there for work, had a couple of days free, big decision, what do? You're in the Caribbean, no surprise, you go kayaking. It all started with a quick meet, refreshment and download of local information with Andres.
No te vayas tan pegado a la orilla.
And a really squeaky
Porque si
bird.
te vas abriendo un poco, te sales y coges la corriente que va hacia acá y te va a llevar más rápido.
It was all very useful, relevant information and clearly the voice of local experience, where we covered traffic, which you'll see later is a topic, a big wave break and a few rocks that are well worth avoiding. So we're on the way now, leaving from Boca Grande, and the arrow is showing the point that I'm aiming for, and it's also part that Andres was saying I should be off the coast by a kilometre or so to avoid the breaking waves. I left the beach here about 7, which gave me these calm conditions to start off with. There was a trend in the days leading up to this where I could see calm conditions in the morning and winds picking up from around midday to 20 or 30 knots coming from the north, which meant this northern coast and the wave break that we're trying to avoid here would actually probably be quite lively and unpleasant. Once I leave the shelter of this peninsula that I'd left from and you're getting out into the open water closer to the island, you soon start to see the bigger swell coming in from the open Caribbean area. I think those must have been at least a metre of swell, which wasn't unpleasant where I was, but certainly further in by the beach you can see it all breaking there behind me. That, with the onshore wind that comes up in the afternoon, it's probably quite an awkward area to be paddling. So it did seem pretty sound advice to stay clear of that area and come back into the coast later on when it's a bit safer. So heading back in now for the more interesting views. So this is one of the beaches you see with a big resort, lots of umbrellas, restaurants, etc. on the beach. All very pretty. I was there far too early, so none of this was open. And some of these are apparently private beaches, which is always an irritation. Just admiring the different bits of scenery as you go and trying to catch the odd wave here and there, but the coast wasn't all very welcoming, so I didn't try too hard. I didn't fancy beaching it on this piece of coast. There's a little farm here where you get all the farmyard sounds, a bit of a cow, you could hear some cocks crowing. It's all smashing atmosphere. A few more waves, got to have a go. See some of these houses, absolutely beautiful locations, lovely little houses, some built with, I guess, the expensive imported materials, with tin roofs and stone, etc., others with local thatching. Whatever your choice of style, what a location. So now we're heading into the beach, which will be the first break, maybe an hour and a half into the paddle. I wanted to rearrange all the kit on the deck as my water bag was falling off and the camera was really on the wrong side, trying to look over the water bag, and it just seemed a good chance to drag in the atmosphere from sitting on a deserted beach. Kit now rearranged. Here's a quick look at the boat for those who care. This is a Winner Otium, which is a Chinese boat made of solid plastic, weighs about 34 kilos. It's solid as hell, but it's not super responsive. But all in all, it's not a bad boat. Next challenge then is to get back off the beach. The deck elastics were a little bit flaccid, so they weren't holding the camera well, kept getting knocked flat with the waves. But other than that, soon got out, no big drama, they're not massive. Back out the back, away from the breakers, and first thing you've got to do, try some more waves because they're there, test the boat. It didn't really steer greatly once on a wave, so I really didn't fancy surfing it right back to the beach. So just kept making my way along the coast and staying clear of the big breakers. Another bay, another lovely house, another gorgeous view. The water's starting to get clearer now as we get towards the southern tip, and you can see on the charts this is then heading into the much deeper water. There's a very small shelf before it drops off into the deep water, so it's noticeably clearer. Soon came across these almost corally parts, and little blowhole there going on, so sort of just hang around watching that while seeing the local fella there fishing off his canoe. Now interestingly, as I passed this guy's canoe, he's actually got a full-on porcelain toilet on his canoe. Goodness only knows why, but there it is, not something you see every day. And if you don't believe me, have a closer look. That, my friends, is a dunny, the first I've ever seen on a canoe.
No, solito, sin amigos.
Okay.
Esa es la parte peor, solo quiero acabar ese antes de los vientos y ya.
¿Este lo compraste de Canadá?
No, es al lado de la playa. Bueno,
Adiós.
hasta luego, chao.
So quick gossip, this guy had been staying at the resort there over my shoulder, out for a little paddle in the morning, keen to tell me all about the scuba diving options. So passing more houses, more almost private bays, but just gorgeous isolated little places. A lot of people proudly showing the Colombian flag, and just look at that water, so gorgeous. So there's some ruins there. This is now the southernmost tip as we're coming round to really the sheltered side, which means I've achieved my goal of doing this exposed coast before the wind kicks up. Coming more towards the hotel-y area now. There's a hotel there dead ahead, restaurant-y bar off to the left. One of the local water taxis, stroke local transport, looked like he had bags of cement or something on board. And this boat said something along the lines of carrying stroke pumping drinking water, and it did have a pipe off to the beach, so I guess they're dragging water around the coast and pumping it into some of these communities. It's a really smashing little bar and restaurant on the beach here, which I was supposed to stop at. One is a friend of Andres. Sorry Andres, I aimed more for getting headway before the wind started, which was going to make the return leg somewhat harder work. Approaching a bit of history now is the San Fernando Fort. So this was originally built in the 17th century as the Fort of San Luis. The French took it in 1697. And then later again it was taken by the Brits, who took it in 1741 and made rather a mess of it, pretty much destroyed it, and it was then rebuilt in 1759, and it's now called the Fort of San Fernando as opposed to San Luis. So I had the chance to paddle up close and personal. I got into that part of the moat that you saw earlier, so we're coming around the walls, and again passing here the main entrance and landing bay, which is great. You can actually see through. I do have the original 360 footage. It's about 10 minutes long just paddling around the fort. I might actually post that on YouTube as raw 360 footage, so you can scroll all around and see the whole thing up close and personal. It's been edited heavily to keep the video at a realistic time for this. So again, we're able to get into the actual moats here and go right up between the defence walls. And we can see these holes off my right side, which were, I assume, some sort of drainage or possibly even sewers. Soon got as far as I can. The water's a bit shallow there, a bit overgrown. Unfortunately a bit of rubbish in there as well. Though the logical thing is, you've got something to explore, you get in, have a little look. It wasn't easy to see, but you can see the original brick structure in there, and it went on way further than I was interested in paddling, and it looked as though there were other parallel tunnels, so presumably if you were keen you could go a long way in there and have a good look around. And on the way back out I find myself the only other vertical wall climbing crab I've ever seen. He seemed quite adept at wandering up the walls. and then quickly find I'd become a tourist attraction to the people from above. So back out and on with the trip. Leaving the fort now, we see the jetty where I guess the tourists come up. This is how you would normally come if you'd paid for a boat trip to the fort. These are the guys we need to be careful of on the trip, and again we'll see later how some of them drive. Interesting. And around the next corner there's a bar. If you know Colombia, no bar is worth anything unless it's got lots of noise, and this one was no exception. It was booming out. So leaving the noise of the bar behind, I'm out into the isolation and serenity of the mangroves. So past the first small island, and then came to this. Another small island with a young girl paddling a dugout canoe, which I've never seen in the flesh before. It would have been fascinating to show you that boat up close, however, didn't really feel welcome. There were dogs barking and you could hear the girl calling out for mum and dad to work out who's this bloke in a yellow boat turning up. So I left them to it and kept going. This does, however, show one of the shortcomings of the 360 camera. It's great that you don't miss anything and you can get these sweeping shots which are wonderful. However, when you try and zoom in on a detail like a dugout which you don't see very often, you very quickly lose the resolution and the result's a bit rubbish. Onwards and upwards, more mangroves, still very surreal, quite serene experience just paddling past the mangroves. Next up, find another new friend. He managed to shout out that he lives on one of the islands and says hello and all the rest of it. Just very cool. What a lifestyle. So while this pelican drops in for his lunch, I'm starting to wonder if I should have stopped at the castle as originally planned, where I could have had a proper lunch. Though lo and behold, you get around the next corner and what do you see or hear? There's a bar on the beach. Clearly very convenient kayak parking and easy access to the bar. So we head on in there, have a quick test. So meet Danilo, the owner of Mi Playita, a little bar on the beach. So I stopped here for a quick maracuya juice. Local delicacy with a bit of ice. It's exactly what the doctor ordered after a good day paddling. So a quick refreshing refuel with Danilo in the bar, and I am back on the road again. You can see now from the flags the wind's starting to pick up. So from here on, the going's a little bit slower, having to work a bit harder. I certainly have to label this a really good place to stop for the kayaks, because the little beach there, easy access, there's no problem with where to leave your boat while you're in there having your little drinks, and the lack of a jetty means you're unlikely to meet any of these bigger power boats. Well worth a visit. So we're soon into the very last of the mangrove areas, and we're starting to get now to the area where Andres had told me that I would expect to see a lot of traffic, and this was where he suggested staying right in close to the shoreline to keep out of their way. He was right, there was a lot of traffic. They weren't really a bother here, but there were quite a few of them, lots of music blaring on them. It was all a bit of a party atmosphere on these bigger boats by the looks. And before you know it, there's another resort to my left, and start making the break away from the island and back towards the mainland. And of course, once in the open water, that's where these boats start to be a pain. As you can see here, They don't respect you, they come bombing at you. You're sort of in a blind spot because the bow's so high, the guy driving at the back, unless he has a spotter at the front, he can't see you. I'm waving the paddle on this one because he was heading straight at me. He did seem to get the point. You see a change of course and he passed safely behind me, but you do have to wonder what, if anything, is going through their heads. Visible behind now are the cranes from the container terminal, and the city ahead is getting bigger, while right beside me another pelican goes for his lunch. Next treat I had on the long slog back against the wind, I was followed by these birds. I have no idea what they were. They looked like pterodactyls, but I'm guessing they probably weren't. But they followed me for a good few minutes, which was a nice treat and breaks up the monotony of a long slog against the wind. If you know what the birds are, feel free to tell me. Past the anchored tugboat, now up to the beach, right back to where we started from. City's quite spectacular, quite a welcoming view back, and met by Carlos, who works with Andres. It would appear from this they don't want me surfing back through all the swimmers, which is probably for the best, but it would have been quite a glamorous finale. No worries though, the swimmers were all fine, and Carlos soon dragged me back to the beach, and I go with the flow. And with that, my adventure around the Isla Tierra Bomba was over, which turned out to be around 25 k's and about 5 hours of paddling. So a quick look at where we are. You can see here Cartagena on the north end of Colombia, top end of South America, and zoomed in the full GPS track around the island. So long story short, it was a great paddle, really good to paddle somewhere new. It was great to see new things, different places, the food, the music, excellent, loved the experience, definitely worth a go. Give Andres a call if you're heading to Colombia. See you soon. I have a trip to Rio, also for work. See you there.
Porque como mañana es domingo, va a haber mucha salida de lancha que van para las islas. Entonces trata de ir muy pegado y muy pendiente de las lanchas que
¿Y son sensatos o imbéciles?
Imbéciles. Entonces tienes que estar con remo levantando y pendiente, ¿viste?
Y todo.
Tal cual.